Then John says, looking at the page about Dennis and the new foods, the one I remember, of course, is the first night Dennis had sushi. It wasn't down at the 72nd Street place. It was at the little place out on Broadway. It was just the three of us, I think. And then Dennis says, yeah, I told Chip I was ready for sushi, and I was going to try it. I wanted to go to my friend's place, who always gave me the sake, but I wanted to know I could eat it before we went there. Then John said, the place had all these tropical fish aquaria on the walls, and there were lots of fish jokes. First, sushi can be pretty rough on anybody. Chip brought this big a la carte tray that pretty much covered everything. 3 pieces of this, 3 pieces of that. So if Dennis didn't like one, there was always another. They brought it out on this immense plate that had a prop under one edge so that it was tilted up. Dennis kind of squinted through the first 2 or 3, but then he got into it. And of course, in the middle of it, he took too much green mustard. Dennis said, yeah, I remember that too. But it was good, and I liked it. Sushi, I mean. And John says, I just remember the look on your face, the look of someone who's just chewed into a whole lot of wasabi. Thank you.
You know, what's the line in the Dylan song? To live outside the law, you must be honest. I think the truth the truth underneath that is simply that if you are, you've got to make your own laws. And making your own laws, I don't mean in any kind of vigilante way, any kind, you've got, if you're going to live outside the boundaries of where, what side he says is the acceptable way, you have the onus is on you to come up with a reasonable way to do that.
Okay, and now for the stalwart and staunch who've stayed through everything up till now. I'm going to read a bit from my latest book, Times Square Red, Times Square Blue. Maybe I should have started with that one, who knows. This is a book about, it's about lots of things. The section I'm going to read you is about what went on in some of the porn theaters that a few years ago were so ignominiously closed around the city, and give you some idea of what was actually in there. And the second half of the book is a kind of very more or less scholarly analysis of the whole process, but the first part of the book is a kind of user-friendly, if that's the proper term for it, account of some of those things. What I start describing, by the way, is is a scene in the Variety Photoplays Theater that used to be on 3rd Avenue, and then we move over to the Metropolitan, which used to be also which used to be around the corner on 14th Street. One day, in the Variety's balcony, I noticed a good-looking Spanish guy in his early 20s, possibly even his late teens, sitting in the forward seats to the left. At least 8 months of rooftop weightlifting had filled out his orange t-shirt's shoulders. He'd opened his khaki pants and was masturbating. As I watched, an older guy moved into the seat beside him, leaned close, and whispered. Pausing the length of 2 or 3 strokes, the younger guy said something back. The older rose and moved away, while the kid went back to what he was doing. Over the next 20 minutes, 2 more men sat next to him. To each, he said something. Again, each left, one to sit 2 seats away, the other to wander off into the theater's black. Pretty soon, no one was joining him anymore. The young man went on energetically, pumping it himself, a seat free either side. Later, in the lounge, what the longer-term customers called the space behind a small wall backing the balcony's last row, under a filthy skylight, I overheard 2 men, one black, one white. That straight kid over there beating off? He's gorgeous. Why isn't anybody doing him? Oh, he tells everybody who sits next to him he wants to do it himself. He says you can watch, but he wants you to sit at least a seat away. Oh, I see. Well, I just don't know if my heart could stand that. I'll go downstairs and let him do his thing. One or the other chuckled in the theater's shadow. A while later, walking along the horizontal aisle between the balcony's front and back seats, I glanced at the young guy 2 rows below and a few seats to the side, when suddenly he put back his head, black hair glimmering in the screen's light in rhythm with his fist. He blinked twice, closed his eyes, clamped his teeth, and, as his lips pulled apart in 2 large gouts and a smaller, from his speeding grip, his fluids arched into the black between his khaki knees, wide against 2 different seat backs. Jerkily, his fist slowed, and he growled. After moments, breathing hard, he sat up to grin. Hey, that was a pretty good one, wasn't it? Left and right, from 3 and 4 seats away, half a dozen men looked at him and grinned back. As a 40-year-old Asian man, somewhat heavy, in a suit jacket and sitting a row behind him, caught his breath and, only a bit less spectacularly, came. The young man looked up and, still grinning, saw me. Not bad, hey? You watching me too? I nodded. I'm getting off on her up there, he pointed at the screen, and you guys are all getting off on me. That's funny, huh? That guy there, his hand swung to point at the Asian, he always comes the same time I do. Don't you? Didn't you? Come on, didn't you? He looked back at me. He always does that. Every time I shoot, he shoots. Ain't that a trip? Looking over, he laughed. Smiling somewhat sheepishly, the Asian glanced up at me. That's really funny, huh? The guy went on volubly. I don't mind, though. It ain't nothing. Turning back to the screen, he made 2 fists, stretched his arms wide, and yawned. Well, I'm going to get off a couple more times. He glanced at his watch. Damn, I've been here since this place opened. Then I'm going home. I wandered away. But 10 minutes later, when I walked by again, I looked down over the rail to see him once more industriously at work. Some of the guys around him had gone. Some new ones had sat down to observe. My own adventures kept me in the orchestra so that an hour and a half later, when, thinking of leaving, I wandered into the lobby, as I looked away from the ticket taker, arguing on his stool with his 2 friends, up the stairway to the balcony, along the lobby's wall by the movie posters, in his orange t-shirt and khaki slacks, the same young man ambled lackadaisically down. When he was a third of the way, however, I saw with some shock his fly was open. His uncut penis, along with both testicles, hung free. The sight of genitals when you don't expect them, in a public space, say, astonishes. The heart pounds, the stomach clutches. This is what makes exposure a violation. But it is not the greatest astonishment in the world, and acclamation mitigates it. For a moment, I wondered if indeed it was an oversight. And when we are astonished, we often laugh, which is healthy if the shock signals no danger. Just then, among the 3 men at the door, the heavy one in the baseball cap looked up. With a slightly suspended smile, he turned to the others. Hey, there's your cousin up there, and laughed. The guy on the stool looked and suddenly frowned. Hey, what the fuck you doing? Disingenuously, the guy coming down the steps glanced over. What do you mean? Come on, man, put yourself away now. Huh? The guy persisted, though a smile was trying to fight its way from behind his nonchalance. Come on now, put your fucking dick away, you hear me? Glancing down at himself, the guy feigned amusement. Huh? My cock? Why? What's the matter with it? It's out your damn pants. That's what's wrong with it. Damn it, the ticket taker said. I ain't gonna let you in here no more if you don't. Why do I gotta put my dick away? The young man came down another step.